So welcome everyone. This is the first session of Thiagi on instructional design. Thiagi, all yours.
Thank you, Esther. The people who are here probably don't need this session because I know Jesse is an instructional designer. Rahul knows everything about everything, including New York gastronomical delights. And Nick, I don't recall last time I saw him, but I like the cap he has got. And Claire, I have seen you before, Claire. So you probably are already capable of conducting this workshop. And hello, Hari. I can't see your picture, but I can visualize what you look like. So today's session is going to be, I'm going to ask Esther to put the slides so you all know that I'm capable of doing PowerPoint slides, even though they are totally unnecessary. And today's session is a part of three-session thing on design and development. And each of these three sessions are self-contained, independent of each other. So you can come to just one session, today's session, and skip the other two, or skip today's session, go back home, catch up with your sleep, and you can still survive, get useful things. Actually, one approach I use in my training sessions is I implement the 9-minute rule. And the 9-minute rule basically says if you attend any random consecutive 9 minutes of any of my sessions, you will still get something useful. So you can catch a nap after 9 minutes, or go home after 9 minutes, or come back at any 9 minutes. So the session is a part of the track on design and development. And these are a part of instructional development or instructional design. And primarily, I like the slides flicking. And that is Esther's attempt at keeping me awake. So design and development is a part of the track because I saw it in the list. And here is something I'm always aware of, being in the instructional design for a long time. There are lots of things, piece of advice, information, knowledge, approaches associated with analysis in instructional development. Similarly, lots of things about evaluation, about implementation. But if you look at any instructional development book or course, you will find very little attention being consciously paid to design and development. For example, the latest one I pulled off, the original ADI document I pulled off my bookshelf, has lots of pages for analysis and only 2 pages for design and development, which can be summarized with that saying: to design, look at the analysis results and the specifications yielded by your analysis and come up with the ideas on how to reach those specifications. And for development, it says implement everything you designed in the previous step. And here is a curious question I have. And if any of you enlighten me, I will be eternally happy because I never got an answer to this question. What is the difference between design and development? Since Scott Parker knows the answers to everything in life, Scott, what's the difference between design and development in instructional arena?
Good question. Could we look at design as being, so design has, it's not that it's more, when I think of development, it's executing, right? You have a plan, you have the structure, and when you develop, you have, all that is clear. So it's very tactical. Design has that strategic element of reaching out. You don't know what you don't know at that phase. By the time you develop, you should know what everything is. And you're finding ways to implement, you're finding ways to, that might be technology, that might be content development, that might be creating the actual executing on the plan. Whereas design is more broad. You have a series of problems, you're exploring the problem space, and you're defining a solution set out of that. I don't know. How does that, I kind of just made that up. How's that?
Thank you, Scott. Folks, that is the official definition of design and development. What Scott said is true because I don't understand anything he said. So that sounds very
successful. Good.
Good. Anybody else want to jump in and say, hey, this is the difference between design and development?
One of the ways I think about it is the design is similar to construction, is putting together the blueprint or what we're trying to, unless we're into the development stage, we're actually building. So the design phase is the blueprint, putting it together. The development phase is putting that plan into action and starting with the foundation and going upwards.
Okay, so design is planning, development is executing the plan for your training. That is good because I understand it could be dangerous. Anything I understand could be dangerous. So today, what I'm going to be doing is reveal to you the secret of design and development. And primarily what happens in design and development, you got two components of training. One component is content, is the knowledge, is the factual information. And the other component of training is activity, what the participants do, what you do as a trainer. And the secret of design and development is that you should harmoniously integrate content and activities. As one of my irritating sayings is, don't teach any content unless it is immediately incorporated in an activity. And don't do any activity unless it drives some content. So you got to have content, you got to have activities. And if you want to have effective and engaging training, you should be able to put both of these things together. And we'll begin by looking at, here are different sources of content. Okay, hey, wow, all I have to do is think and the slide changes automatically. So here are some variety of content resource types. Take a look at them and see if you need for me to blabber about any of those items because you don't understand what it means, because you cannot think of an example, because you would like for me to explain some more. Hello, Deepika. Everything makes sense to you on this slide?
Hi,
Deepika.
Thiagi. I'm just going over it. Yeah.
Okay. You're taking a lot of time. You must be a serious participant.
Thiagi,
Yep.
in the chat, Ken is wondering about environment. If you can give a
Okay.
bit of an example about that.
Thank you. Environment. Good. Recently, I had to do training of a group of American software developers who are being shipped out to Bangalore. So I was hired. Somebody said, "Hey, you look like you're from India. So can you train them what to do in Bangalore?" I have no clue what to do, but that is no problem. What we did to them is we are going to ship you out to Bangalore a week before you're scheduled to arrive. And you will be given a series of tasks. For example, the first thing is for you to go find the local customs inspector's office and get information on what you should do if you want to bring 4 different laptop computers with you. So that is your task. So each of this week, you will have a task and you will have to find the answer. There will not be any lecture. You'll have to learn from the environment. You'll have to learn from Bangalore. You'll have to learn from walking around the streets of Bangalore and trying to find where the customs office is located. And every evening, we will have somebody debrief you, tell you what did you learn, what did you learn about Bangalore, did it jive with your stereotypical conceptions, and what would you do differently tomorrow as a part of Bangalore. So the whole idea is people learn not from experts, but from people floating around Bangalore. And just to make sure they don't get arrested and taken to the jail as possible agents from CIA or something like that, we had the people being tracked. Each one is being tracked by a Bangalorean, a person from Bangalore, and he does not help the person, the participant, unless there is an emergency. So that's an example of environment. Does that make sense, Ken? Okay. Fortunately, I'm a mind reader. Ken said yes. Now, let me go back a step to the previous slide. Anything else in this slide which you would like for me to elaborate? Good. Nobody wants an elaboration. Here is what I want for you to do. Of these 10 different content resource types, which one do you most frequently use? Can you type your answer in the chat area? stories, printed text, video, cases, and Jesse Kemp uses cases. And okay, good. So far, so good. There seem to be things. Let's go on to the next slide, Esther. Some more of content types. Take a look at them, and I'm hoping Ken will ask me a question.
Why do you have these asterisks against some of them, Tyagi?
Ah, wonderful. Okay, what do we have asterisks? Those that have asterisks or live content resources.
Got it.
That means a human being is involved, a subject matter expert like Scott, who knows everything, or other participants, or participants who are different from each other, or coaches, or informants, an informant being somebody who is located in a specific location and knows, not as an expert, but through experience knows a lot. So those with asterisks or live content resources, those without asterisk or dead content or content resources which are archived, which are recorded. For example, audio recording, a real object. These are things which are available. So, folks, unless that, by the way, samples, we recently taught people how to write a subject line in your email. And what we did was to get the subject lines from 50 different emails I received recently, through them all in a handout, told the people of these subject lines, which two seem to be the most meaningful, which two are the clearest subject lines, which two are the most intriguing subject line, which two you would not open that email because the subject line looks suspicious. So using samples is one approach. Here are all different content resources. And what I'm going to do is work on these different resources and see how can we match an activity to go with the content resources. By the way, the most frequently used content resource is a subject matter expert giving a lecture. So let's go to the next slide and see. We are going to be talking about a type of lectures called interactive lectures. Everybody likes giving a lecture. And by the way, do you know what is the technical word for sleepwalking? Good. Somnambulism. Do you know the technical term for sleep talking? Lecture. A lecture is something a trainer who is asleep delivers, and the participants who are equally asleep participates in it. So an interactive lecture says, hey, if you're going to use a lecture, can we make it interactive? can we have the participants not fall asleep, but do something? So the approach to interactive lecture is you give the content in the form of a lecture, but you ask the participants to do various things. Everything I do in Zoom can be labeled as an interactive lecture. So let me take you to the next slide. This particular interactive lecture is on the topic of ABCD. And what does ABCD stand for? It is revealed in the next slide. ABCD stands for Activities-Based Curriculum Design. Folks, this deadly dull, boring lecture is based on my meta-analysis of cognitive science research studies. And I'm going to share with you the findings of many different controlled research studies. And I'm going to summarize all of these important findings, one set of findings on the next slide. And this slide says, anything you teach can be taught through an activity. And I'm sure many of you are ready to challenge me. If so, open up your mic and yell at me. If you challenge me and say there are certain things cannot be taught through an activity, I'll be happy to straighten you up, or I'll be happy to get straightened up by your brilliant arguments. So that is one of the approaches. One of the conclusions, principles I'm sharing with you. Somebody said something, or I have started hearing voices in my head. Good. Just to push you more, let me go to the next slide, which says, anything you teach should be taught through an appropriate activity. I'm kind of telling you, if something is worth teaching, you should teach it through an activity, because teaching something without an activity is not going to be effective or engaging. And once again, you may want to challenge me. By the way, I enjoy being challenged, and the toughest challenge I face will get 20 euros. I have leftover currency from my trip to Europe. So you want 20 euros, which is approximately equal to 20 Swiss francs, 20 US dollars, 20 anything, but 200 rupees.
All right.
Okay.
I can challenge you, Thiagi. And my challenge, so I'm going to take it from invested stakeholders. So the viewpoint of the organizations. Number one, the activities take time. We're not concerned with time. We're more concerned about ticking a box and compliance. So what we want to do is give as much information just to say that we've done it. So the more activity you have, it takes away from people doing their actual job. So the return on the investment isn't there. So what we'd like you to do is remove all of your activities, share the information so we can say we've done our due diligence, and then go about our business.
Wonderful. I don't know who said that. Can you name who you are?
My name's Jesse.
Okay. This is a common misconception from people who live in Canada. They unfortunately equate giving information to training. Jesse, here is one of my principles. You don't have to believe it, but just keep nodding your head. Training it's not giving information. If training equals giving information, we should be replacing you with a loudspeaker, with some kind of a thing. To me, by the way, Jesse, since I got you on my screen, Jesse, how do you define training?
How do I
What,
define training, or the perspective that I'm taking from an organizational standpoint?
give me the Canadian perspective.
Training is arming people with the ability to perform new skills or behavior.
Okay. My skill for listening to you needs some boosting. Okay, but whatever you say is true. Did I just earn a BMW? No, you did not, CJ. Okay. Perform skills equals activity. Jesse says performing skills. To me, training is changing your behavior, changing your ability, changing your skill set, applying whatever you learn to your job or to your life. That is what training is. Short of being able to transfer and apply whatever I'm teaching you is totally useless. It is not training. It is telling stories and lecturing, things of that nature. And the approach I'm recommending is all training should involve activity. And what do I say that? Because here is one of the principles derived from research shown on the next slide. And people learn through active participation, not from passive reception of information. For example, people don't learn how to swim by listening to the laws of flotation or Avogadro's hypothesis. Do you know that when you immerse your body in water, it displaces an equal volume of water? And if the weight of the volume of water is less than the weight of your body, then you float. Now you know everything about the principle of swimming. You're ready to swim. You'll probably drown if you don't already know. So you don't learn anything from passively listening to the principles and the knowledge and bits of information. You learn how to swim by jumping into water. So I'm going to keep on stressing the importance of activity. And as we see in the next slide, I'm going to talk about 3 laws of activity, one of which is called law of practice and feedback. Another one is called law of contextualized learning. And the third one is tacit learning. And we are going to go through each one of them, beginning with the next slide, which says law of practice and feedback. And let me pick on somebody, not Rahul, not Scott, not Deepika. So I don't know how to look at the list of participants. So, and here they are. Can somebody tell me how to find the list of participants?
Click on the participant at the bottom of the screen, Thiagi. You got mute, then stop video, then got participants. Click on that, and then it'll open in a window pane.
Okay.
Thanks,
I'm
Raul.
look-
Do you have that?
At the bottom
Oh.
of your screen, Thiagi.
I'm
Of
at
the
the
Zoom
bottom.
screen.
There is a cursor which keeps on moving without my doing anything. But that's
Why don't you minimize and maximize your Zoom window, and maybe it'll pop up then.
how do I minimize and maximize?
Are you using a Mac or?
If you move around, you should have a menu that pops up. And I just sent you a message in the chat. So that could be also just helping you to open that bar, sidebar.
Or
So-
are you actually applying the law of practice without feedback right now?
Yes, exactly. I'm applying the law of practice without feedback, definitely. Now, okay, you are viewing LDA facilitator screen. View options. Oh, it disappeared.
Just go to the bottom. You're looking at the top, Thiagi. At the bottom, where it has your mute. Next to that is stop video. And then next to that is participants. There's 13 in there. If you click on that once, you'll get a pane of which all the participants will be there.
Okay, good. So I'm going to spend the middle of the night wondering what I did wrong. Okay, but in the meantime, I'm going to look at the list of participants and I'm going to hello, Sarah, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sarah, my name is Sivasalam Thiagarajan.
Hey.
Hello, everybody. Did you hear my conversation with Sarah? Now, Sarah, can you tell me my name?
I don't think I want to
By the
try.
way, okay, go ahead.
I think the first bit I'm going to struggle with, but I'm hearing the second bit is Thiagi.
Okay, good. So, many people equate, especially if they are from Canada, equate telling as training. I told Sarah, my name is Sivasalam Thiagarajan. Does it mean she has learned it? No, because Sarah can repeatedly keep saying whatever she says. And it doesn't mean that practicing makes you perfect. People say practice makes perfect. That is blasphemy. That is not true. Practice does not make you perfect. Practice makes it permanent. So if Sarah keeps on saying Thiagi again and again and again, or if Sarah mispronounced my name 50 times, she is going to make that behavior permanent. But that does not make her acquire that particular skill. So what you need is to give appropriate constructive feedback. And okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. Sarah, let me tell you how to say my first name. It is Sivasalam. So can you say Siv?
Yeah, so
And
it's asylum.
okay, good. You are one step ahead of me. Siv Asylum, as in the loony bin, Siv Asylum. That is how we say my first name. Can you say my name, my first name now?
Asylum.
Beautiful, brilliant. The last name is Thiagarajan. Thia as the Spanish for ant. Can you say Thia?
Yeah.
The middle sound is garage as the place where you park your car. Can you say garage?
Garage.
Can you say Thia garage?
Yeah, garage.
Thia garage. And the final sound is an Thiagarajan.
So Thiagarajan.
Beautiful, brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Your name is Sarah Walsh. Okay, good. So practice is not enough. You got to give feedback. Practice equals activity. You learn through activity, but not only through activity, you also learn through feedback. And let's move on to the next law related to active learning, law of contextualized learning. Content is important, but equally important is the context. If I'm going to train you how to be a facilitative trainer, I can talk to you about that. But what I need to do is put you in the context where you will have to do training, put you in front of a bunch of participants and give you a topic like quantum mechanics and say, teach this topic to this group only when you are in the real context. About 10 years ago, I just remembered. Hey, this morning I spent 30 minutes setting up a tripod and the light. Now you know how ugly I look. Okay, so 10 years ago, I took a course called How to Become a Millionaire. And the instructor looked at us and said, I'm going to share with you the secret of becoming a millionaire. Write it down, practice it. If you do it every day, you will become a millionaire. And what he said was very significant. He said, to become a millionaire, buy low, sell high. Doesn't matter what you buy things at a low, cheap rate, and then sell the same things at a higher price. And obviously, it has not worked because I have not become a millionaire yet. So it has to be done in the context. I got to go start buying things in the real world. In theory, I can do it. So if you're teaching something, put people as close to on the job training as possible. Which brings us to the third law related to active learning on the next slide, which is called the law of tacit learning. There's a lot of things you learn rationally, you learn visibly. For example, I can teach you about osmosis. I can give you the definition and things of that nature. And there are things you learn tacitly. And there are many people who are expert swimmers, expert skiers, and things of that nature. If you ask them, how do I ski, which I did in Switzerland a couple of weeks ago and ended up breaking my ankle. Uh, if you ask people how to ski, they say things like make sure your center of gravity is within the two skis and things of that nature. That is explicit learning, but what they do is things they know tacitly. They cannot verbalize it. The problem with asking subject matter experts, how do I become a millionaire, or how do I ski, or how do I do cross-cultural communication, they will tell you a lot of explicit information, but how they do it, they probably don't themselves know. So there is a law of tacit learning. And how do you learn? By repeatedly doing things. And for example, in Sydney, Australia, we were hired to train law enforcement officers on how to make a decision whether to shoot or not to shoot. And this is obviously a matter of life and death. So we asked experts what are factors involved and how to decide whether to shoot or not to shoot. The expert said there are 11 different factors involved, including the perpetrator, the time of the day, the situation, and so on and so forth. So it became very clear that by the time we think through all the 11 factors, we'll be dead. So what we did was to design a training activity. We did 110 different segments which lasted for 2 minutes or so. And we played the segments as videos, and we gave everybody a laser gun, and we said, make a decision, shoot at the appropriate time. And for example, if we shoot Deepika in the middle as she's reaching inside her handbag because you were worried that she could be pulling out a gun, you killed poor Deepika. And so that is a situation where you should have decided not to shoot, but you shot. So keep on doing that. And that is all you're going to be doing. You're going to go through segment after segment of a video where you have to make a decision whether to shoot or not shoot. If you hesitate too long, you're killed. If you don't hesitate long enough, you kill some innocent person. And David Adamu Beki, 19 policemen in New York shot him, and he was just putting his hand in his pocket to pull out his driver's license to show to them. So what we did was to play these segments, how they make a decision, and after a suitable pause, an expert comes on screen and explains what happened, what decision he had made, and what went wrong, and keep on doing this. Here is the data. At the end of this particular session, when we compare the decisions during the first 10 segments and during the last 2 segments, the decisions made by the participants during the last 2 segments were superior, were appropriate. They did not kill innocent people, and they did not get killed. And how did they learn? how to make those decisions, not by listening to a lecture, not by rational thinking, but by incorporating what happened during their experience. So one approach to training is to let people practice several times and give them feedback, and they tacitly learn how to do it. And all of this brings us to the yin and yang here in the next slide. Good training contains content and activities, and they have to be harmoniously integrated. That is the South Korean flag. And the next slide gives you a piece of advice. As training designers, we focus so much on designing slides, designing handouts, designing videos. We design content resources. My suggestion, my recommendation is you should spend more time designing activities and not content. So that is the major goal. By the way, content is available. There are any topic you want to teach, the content is there. You don't have to do it. And activities, we will tell you how to do it. So, folks, here is the next slide. Reduce, use content resources. There are many different content resources. And for activities, there are many templates. Okay, let us go to the next slide. I have been boring you with the lecture. If I stop now, you would not have learned anything. So the next slide, please, sister. We are going to do an activity called mixed up sentences. You listen to my lecture, and I'm going to torture you to apply the content you listen to in the lecture. And here is a task. I'm going to show you a list of summary sentences based on my lecture. There are 7 different summary sentences, and all of them are from my lecture, but one of them is not from my lecture. So can you look at these 7 summary sentences, and can you figure out which one is a fake sentence, which one is a sentence that talks about something I did not cover in my lecture? And can you type in the chat area the number associated with this sentence, which is okay, good. Rahul has it, Claire has it. Okay. Okay, SP has it. Okay, many of you selected number 4. Training design is associated with the individual courses, whereas curriculum design is associated with a lot of courses. Interesting, profound thought, but it has nothing to do my lecture presentation. That was task number 1. In case you have not figured out, what I'm doing is I'm tricking you into recalling, paying attention, looking at your notes, reflecting on what you heard. And here is another task for you on the next slide. Let us remove item number 4, sentence number 4, and I want you to replace by typing in the chat area a suitable sentence which is related to what I was covering in my lecture, but it is not in the list of the other 6 sentences. So on the next slide, you have the sentences ignore item number 4 because we know it is not from my lecture. There is not a single missing sentence. There are several possible content from the lecture which is not in the list. So can you type what you think is a message? Rahul has typed something. He says, you got 3 things to consider, and what do other people think? Anything you teach should be taught through an activity, says Deepika, and anybody else. Yeah. Okay, here is something which looks like Canadian. The technical term for sleepwalking is a lecture. Okay, good. Focus on the activity, not on the content. Physics won't help you to swim. Training is the activity of changing your ability and skills. Okay, my goal is to review everything I said in the lecture, and here is one of the secrets of being an effective instructional designer. The laziest trainer is the most effective trainer. The trainer who keeps her mouth shut achieves more than the trainer who keeps on talking on and on. So we did 2 activities. I gave you a lecture, gave you a list of summary sentences, asked you to remove one of the summary sentences, and asked you to add a summary sentence, and that is what you did. And let us go on to the next slide. One more activity. I'm going to give you the list of all of the summary sentences, original summary sentences. I'm going to remove sentence number 4. Okay. And out of the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, you got 6 different sentences. And can you look at these sentences and can you identify the 2 most important sentences from my lecture? The 2 sentences which deal with principles that you can use. And you can open your mic and tell me, or if you're too shy, you can type. 1 and 5, 1 and 6, 6, 5 and 7. 1 and 5, 1 and 6. 1 seems to be a popular item. So between 5 and 6, anybody who typed 1 and 5, can you explain why 5 is a better and more useful sentence than 6?
Because it talks about integrating the two well. I mean, there should be a correlation between the content and the activities. That's why I think.
Okay. Hey, anybody who chose 6 want to say Deepika is not correct? Design activities rather than content is more important than 5. Obviously, Deepika has convinced everybody. Nobody wants to talk back. Okay, now, this is what we did. I gave you a lecture. I could have stopped at the lecture, but I wanted to practice what I preach. So before preparing for the lecture, I did an outline of 7 different sentences for the content of the lecture. And then I randomly removed one of the sentences and came up with another sentence, which is not something I wanted to cover in the lecture. So I have a list of 7 sentences. One of the sentence, it happens to be sentence number 4, uh, is irrelevant sentence. And then I gave the lecture and I had you look at the sentences, choose the fake sentence, replace it with the sentence you type, and find the top 2 sentences. I could have had you do anything else, but I found these to be useful in forcing you to think back, look at the notes. And by the way, if I'm doing this in an in-person session where there are a group of people in the classroom, I will have them work out the answer to these tasks individually and then get in a team, and as a team decide which one is the most appropriate missing sentence or which one is the top sentence. So forcing people to think about it and interact with each other, that is the goal of the lecture. And here is a question: can you think of something you're going to be teaching to which you can use the mixed up sentences, this particular activity? And my recommendation is keep the activity, keep the structure, but change the content. What content can you put inside the activity? And does Jesse has a question. Would you recommend letting participants know ahead of time? The answer is yes and no, Jesse. You do whatever you feel like. Telling people ahead of time there will be an activity increases their level of awareness. Not telling them ahead of time takes them by surprise, and they learn to pay more attention to the next presentation, things of that nature. Depends on what you feel like doing. Okay, here is a question. Anybody who feels you will not be able to use this particular activity in training you design, can you please type in the chat area simply saying, I cannot use this, and then we will have an interesting conversation. I knew that I should not be doing this with this group. They already know everything. Okay, folks, here is another interactive lecture. Think of everything I talked about so far. Think of what happened so far as a lecture. And here is what I want for you to do. Can you take a piece of paper and write down 2 key words in all of the content I provided so far? Write down any 2 key words. And here is how you're going to score points. If the word you chose as an important term associated with everything I have been talking so far, including the ABCD lecture, including things before that and after that, any 2 words if the words you have written down, and if you don't have paper to write it down, just imagine you writing it down. If the words you wrote down are words which are written down by most other people, you win the game. In other words, your job is to think what other people think that you are thinking that they are thinking. In other words, put yourself in other people's position and come up with any two words which you think will be selected as summary keywords in the lecture so far. Okay. Anybody who wants to state one of the words you selected, one of the two words you selected?
Activities.
I'm sorry?
Activities.
Activity. How many others have selected that word? Okay. 14 people selected that word. Who said activity? You win. Okay. Anybody else? Can you come up with another word which you think will be a popular word? Any other word somebody wrote which may or may not be popular?
Ken
Good.
is suggesting training.
Training.
Noah is suggesting evaluation.
And Lois is suggesting Candy Crush. Nick is suggesting content delivery. Deepika is suggesting sleep talking lecture. So this is another attempt at forcing you to think back on what you came up with. That is another interactive lecture. Here is interactive lecture type number 3. Okay, good. Can each one of you come up with a closed question on what has happened so far? A closed question, meaning a question for which there is a single correct or incorrect answer. Okay, good. Hello, Ken. Can you ask a closed question based on what I've been talking so far?
Hello, could you repeat that? Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Any question?
Can you come up with any question related to what we have been talking so far for which there is a correct answer?
Okay. What is the best way to deliver good training?
What is the best way to deliver training? And who would you like to answer your question?
I would nominate Laura.
Okay, who did you say?
Laura Benson.
Okay.
Okay. Congratulations. You get to win a prize if you give the correct answer to Ken's question.
Unfortunately, I'm having trouble talking, so
because of the allergies. So I think I had to take a pass, and I'll nominate Nick.
Okay, hey, Nick.
All right, I'm getting tagged in. So the most effective way to deliver content is through activities.
Very good. Hey, Nick, congratulations. You win. And Laura, you get a consolation prize also. And Nick, would you like to have some allergies?
I don't have any allergies currently.
Okay, good.
And I already got a prize.
Some?
See my necklace? I got a gold and a blue necklace this morning at my work.
Ah, wonderful. Okay, now can somebody, can you all come up with with an open question, a question for which there is no single correct answer, but you will be able to listen to different answers and decide whether it is a superior answer or not a good answer. So I'm going to pick on Deepika. Deepika, can you ask an open question based on what we have been talking so far?
Yes. What area of instructional design should a facilitator focus most on? I don't know if
What
that's an
area of instructional design should the facilitator focus most on?
Actually,
Okay. Is that a closed question or an open question?
Actually, I think that's a closed question. Sorry.
Okay. What
did you learn from Thiagi's session today?
Is that an open question or a closed question?
That's an
It's
open
an open question because, okay, here is Deepika, select anybody randomly. Deepika selects
Jesse.
Jesse, a fellow Canadian. Hey, Jesse, what did you learn from Thiagi's session today?
I learned that Laura has allergies. I learned that swimming is difficult if you're just learning the physics. And I learned some new texture activities. Hope you can hear me.
Maybe you can just repeat the last sentence.
Many extra activities.
Okay, Deepika, we pretend we heard Jesse clearly.
Kind of did. I did pick up a few things. Like he said that he learned that he can't.
Wait. Don't reveal what you picked up. Now choose somebody else. Okay. Deepika wants to choose Rahul. Hey, Rahul, can you answer the same question? What did you learn from Thiagi's session today? Either Rahul is thinking or muted.
Apologies, I'm always on unmute. So yeah, focus on, you can pick up content wherever, but focus on the activity. Put your efforts into that, not on the content.
Thank you. Now, what I will be doing, Deepika, is ask you to choose two people, listen to their answers, and decide of these two answers, both of them are acceptable, obviously, of these two answers, which one was superior. You choose between Jesse and Rahul.
It's difficult because Rahul's was straightforward and Jesse's was funny.
Well, Jesse's we couldn't hear. That's the problem. So I win default. I mean,
Exactly.
it's
Okay.
just, I mean, what can you say?
Well, let me tell you first what Jesse said is that you can't learn swimming through physics.
Which gets you
Good.
thinking, if you don't mind, just as a thought as we're going through this, is the typical process, has always been here's a topic you want to deliver. You start doing the content first, and then you wrap the activities, interspersed within the content. Perhaps the other approach is design the activities first, and then build the content around the activities, which is it's a bit like your yin and yang, your Korean yin and yang.
Good. Good. Thank you, Rahul. Okay, folks, this one is another interactive.
Nick has a question, by the way.
Yes.
It wasn't a question so much as just a comment on what was just said there, and maybe a response to the question of like what we learned. I'm thinking a lot about like activities versus content, because I think content is a word that we hear a lot today, especially like in the field that I work in, teaching music production. There's this idea that YouTube can replace a lot of the activities that we do in class. And for a while, I kind of bought into that, honestly, and I thought that maybe that was the case, but I'm learning that like as YouTube grows as a resource, somebody needs to organize that information and deliver it effectively. So the tool, it's just encouraging to kind of like hear this and get it organized in such a way as also a novice instructional designer just beginning, coming from the classroom as a lecturer. That was my title. So moving into
very good. One moment, lecturer Nick. Nick said something. Let us pretend it is a lecture. Okay, Nick said something, and if you were not paying attention, you're going to have great difficulty. And Nick said something related to music production. And if you were going to summarize Nick's statement regarding music production, the key element of Nick's statement, what will it be? Anybody who wants to give a summary of Nick's statement, lecturer Nick's statement on music production?
I can't summarize because I was interpreting what Nick was saying. And how I interpreted Nick was saying was the key to music production is in the practice.
Okay. Okay. One of the things, what did other people hear Nick say? Thank you, Rahul. Somewhere in his explanation, I heard Nick saying he thought YouTube is the answer. Then he decided, no, that is not true. That is one of the things. Anything else? Deepika has a lengthy statement. Okay, so all of these are interactive lectures. That is a set of 40 different interactive lectures we frequently use. But the main idea is go ahead, lecture if you feel like it. Go ahead, lecture if your official title is lecturer, and then add some activity before, during, or after the lecture. Lecture is a good way of giving information. You have control and everything, but don't stop with the lecture. Do an activity which will force people to recall and process and use the lecture. So we started by saying there are different content resources, and subject matter expert like Nick is definitely a content resource, and you can use interactive lectures. Esther, can we go back to the slides now that you got tired of showing those slides?
Yes, we absolutely can. And I'm so sorry before, while I'm doing that, there's a question in the chat. Laura is designing Jeopardy game, and she's wondering if the topics and questions should be difficult or easy to answer.
The answer is yes. It should be difficult, it should be easy. And if you're going to use the Jeopardy game, the advantage, people are familiar and they immediately recognize it as a game. The disadvantage is everything could be an easy question. So have a $200 question, which is an open-ended difficult question, and have some easy questions, and keep shifting from easy to difficult. Now, I'm going to talk about another source of content information, which is text material, printed materials. And looking at printed materials, let me share with you a couple of sample Textra games. Textra stands for a text which is extra. And one of the sample games, which is not in the slide, but I will describe to you, is a game called Open Book. And this is how the game works. We use this game with New York State emergency management staff members. New York State is expecting, hey, Jesse escaped, drag him back. New York has hurricane emergencies, so they have hurricane shelters, and there are policies on how to run a hurricane shelter. And these policies have been written by hurricane experts and has been approved by New York State legal authorities. And the policies include all kinds of strange things, like can Deepika bring a pet dog to the hurricane shelter when there is a hurricane going on and everybody is evacuated to the hurricane shelter because it's an imminent hurricane? Can Deepika bring a pet dog? And the answer to that is people cannot bring pet animals unless they are service animals. So if Deepika is visually impaired and she has a seeing eye dog, she can bring the dog. And there are many, many issues like that. So this is what we did instead of preparing. By the way, the book was 278 pages long. So instead of preparing 279 slides, we gave everybody a copy of the book. And we said, here is step one. Go through the book, flip through any random page, and write a question based on the content of the page. And write the question on a card and don't write the answer, write the page number where the answer will be found. Because our goal is in the Hurricane Center, you will have access to this policy manual, this book. And it is not necessary you should memorize the answers to all issues, but you should know where you can find the answer and how we can find the answer very quickly. So write a question, put the page number, and each one of you create 10 different cards with questions and page references. And you can choose any page you want, but make sure the second page you choose is at least 10 pages away from the first question you chose. And they keep on writing 10 questions on cards, and I collect all of the cards, shuffle them up, and I say, everybody ready? There's an open book examination. I'm going to read a question. The first person to say, this is the page where the answer is found, gets a point. So I read a question. For example, the question could be, who is authorized to declare the hurricane threat is expired? And the people have to find the page number where the answer is going to be found. The person who wrote the question has an advantage. And so we play the game looking at different questions. And just to keep them on their toes, I have a pre-prepared set of questions with page references. So not all questions I read are questions written by the group, and I'm keeping them on their feet and things of that nature.
Working on that.
Oh my God, it is my computer.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
Shut up, and I don't want to do anything. Okay, Alexa is keeping on a tour. I was tempted to ask her a hurricane question. So people become familiar not with the answers, but the structure and the organization of the Hurricane Center manual. And later on, we continue playing the game and we ask tough real world questions and they see if they can come up with the answer. So that is the open question where we use the entire book as the source of the text. On the other hand, let me go to the other game called Headlines. This is a game where we give people, this is a game used in training facilitators. We give people a piece of advice on how to be a good facilitator, an effective facilitator. Unlike the book, this is just one single piece of practical advice, as we see in the next slide. And this is a text message. Here is the task for you to do. Read this message on how to be an effective facilitator. And can you come up with a heading, with a title for this piece of advice? And can you come up with a suitable, meaningful, memorable piece of advice and a meaningful headline for this piece of advice and type it in that area? Or if you prefer, open up your mic and tell me what could be a good title for this simple piece of advice on how to become a facilitator.
I have a tip from yesterday. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And so I asked people what they wanted to learn in my workshop. I had about 7 people, what they wanted to get out of it. And so one person said that they wanted their videos to become better and nicer. And that wasn't actually the topic of my workshop.
Yes.
So I had to just shift and give some tips, like right on the fly to help her with her question. And then she was leaving the workshop early. But I wanted to stay on track with the rest of the plan without getting too derailed, which can be difficult when you're in a webinar because you're trying to also focus on keeping everyone together on what we're learning. And so, so that worked out pretty well.
To be flexible, yes.
Mm-hmm. But I had to, shift gears pretty quickly, and it wasn't really like going exactly to the step-by-step plan that I had, so it shifted a lot.
Yes, good. And this piece of advice says, be playful, be serious, shifting gears, like rigidly prepared versus totally spontaneous and flaky. And I've been picking people's brains on what headlines they would recommend. Read the room, says Nick. Wonderful idea, wonderful title. Adapt your behavior to the content, says Claire. Another good title. Shapeshifter, says Deepika, was been reading too many science fiction novels. Okay, so here is what I'm going to be doing. I have saved 3 of the previous recommended titles. I'm going to save your titles for the next group, but here are 4 titles from a previous group. Okay, Esther, can you read the 4 titles? Number 1.
Be a bipolar facilitator.
Continue reading.
So the second one, be a playful facilitator. Seriously. Number 3, facilitate in a seriously playful fashion. And the 4th and last one, I'm serious, I'm playful, so are you.
Okay, gang, pretend this is a poll. I'm too lazy to set up a poll. Can you type in the chat area one of those 4 numbers which you think is the best headline for this particular piece of advice? Wow. Okay, those who participated all chose 2, except Ken and Rahul chose 3. And Laura chose 2. Okay, so this is an example of a textra game. You give a piece of textual information. It could be a couple of sentences, a paragraph, or an article, and you ask people to just come up with a suitable title that forces them to look at the big picture. So, Esther, can you keep going up on the list of slides until you come to the start of the set of slides? By the way, folks, this is accelerative learning. I'm doing a complete review of everything. Good, I have done that. Now, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, folks, here are different content types. And for each content type, we can come up with a suitable type of activity. For example, for printed text, we can use textra games. Now, anything in these content types you would like for me to give an example of how we used an activity? Good. I'm psychic. Somebody said online information. So one of the approaches we use, one of the activities we use is called the 4-door approach. And we tell people, here is an online learning session, and you can go through any one of 4 different doors. Door number 1 is the library. It contains all of the content. It has slide sets, it has text material. And the second door is cafe. You go to the cafe and there are open-ended questions in the cafe, and you can talk to other people in the cafe and come up with suitable responses to the open-ended question. The third door is the playground. You go there and there is a Jeopardy game or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game, and there are closed questions here, and you accumulate points by giving correct responses. And the fourth door is application door. You come up with suitable application. So this is the type of activity we use with online. Thank you, Laura. And job aids. People are familiar with job aids. Job aids are little checklist type items. And one activity we do is take a job aid. Let us say the job aid explains how to do 5 different steps to figure out what should be your daily consultant rate. So we take the 5 steps and give different people one of the 5 steps. So the first person knows how to estimate your annual income. The second person knows how to add to the income all kinds of benefit-related finances. And each person learns one step of the job aid, and then we put them all together, give them a challenging task, and have them work together to apply the job aid. Test instruments. It is called assessment-based learning activities. For example, instead of giving a lecture and asking questions, we have an ABLA, an assessment-based learning activity, which begins by giving people, hey, folks, this is your final test. Here are 4 items from your final test. Which items you all can already answer, and which item you think is the most frightening item. Based on this kind of pre-examination, we teach just the most critical piece of information. Cases, everybody knows what cases are. You can give people cases and have them independently analyze it and come up with a suitable solution to the problem, get together in teams, get together as a large group. Video, we can do an activity approach called double exposure. We show a video, and instead of showing the concluding section, we stop the video 80% after it has been shown. We stop there and say, how would you conclude this video? What will be in the remaining 20% of the video? Come up with your idea, get together in a team, and decide the script for the ending of the video, good. Each team describe how you think the video should end, and you show the actual ending of the video, and you say, okay, the video is on stages of team development, and you were able to apply what he did. Stories, we ask people to tell real stories about the topic. The topic is about being a flexible facilitator. Can you, anybody other than Dora, can you come up with an example of how you had to shift your pre-prepared plans because something unexpected happened in a session, either something you did or something you saw some of the trainer do remarkably, and we collect the stories when we tell them what are some of the common. So these are different kinds of things we can do. So what do we do next? Which is an open-ended question. Hey, Nick, let me go back to you since you seem to have an interesting topic and unusual topic. Okay.
So, yeah, I can maybe give an example of something that happened recently in the classroom. I was
Please.
teaching a program, a recording program called Pro Tools, and I was getting really in the weeds of some technical specifications and terminology. And I could tell that some students weren't grasping the terminology, which I explained to them at the beginning. This is something that's like a gatekeepy term, so it's going to take some time to understand. And you're going to hear it here, you're going to hear it on these videos. So be patient with yourself. But as I was losing them, I also just I had to stop. I made a joke of some kind, which got them laughing, which that only happens 50% of the time. Sometimes I throw a joke out there, it doesn't land, but got them laughing. And then I was able to say, but seriously, here's why this is important, and relate it back to like the job of an audio engineer and being able to, so got them back into engaging and then reminded them why they were there in the first place. It's like, yeah, this is hard, but you want to work with these bands and you want to participate in advancing the canon of music you think is important. So here are the things you need to understand to get to that level. So, took it as a short opportunity to remind them of why they were there.
Wonderful. That is an excellent example of being playful with your joke and being serious by reminding them what their job is, how serious their job is. Good. And Nick, going back to, can you tell me what is the name of the software you were warning people about?
Yeah, it's called Pro Tools.
What tools?
P-R-O, tools. So I lead them through an official certification in the program.
Okay, Pro Tools. So give me a complex element of Pro. Tell me something you would be explaining during your presentation.
Hardware buffer size.
Okay, now can you define hardware buffer size?
Yeah, it's the amount of a Pro Tools session that the program pre-reads. So it's not reacting in real time as it plays it back. So it has it loaded in its cache to be able to communicate immediately instead of reading in real time.
Folks, that was brilliantly confusing and incomprehensible for lay people like us. And if I ever end up in Nick's class, I would ask Nick, what are the sources of information? Nick explained the definition. So, what other sources of information other than you explaining the definition, Nick?
So I have activities that demonstrate practical ways in which you can see how the hardware buffer size affects performance, or so you walk through specific things to where you would want to adjust it. So instead of looking at that definition, which, yeah, is pretty complex, we see the situations in which you would want to adjust it. A performer's, their performance in their headphones is delayed. So we make that happen in a computer. They experience that. And so they get the practical experience of, oh, this is when we want to go to the hardware buffer size and adjust it.
Good. So one way of describing what you're suggesting, Nick has potentially a lot of cases, lot of simple snippets of what happens on the job as a pro tool using engineer type of a thing. So one approach will be for Nick to say, hey, here is the definition. And each one of you got the definition, read it, get confused. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you different examples of what happens on the job. For example, somebody's headphone is delayed. How does that relate to this definition? Is there a connection between the definition and my example? Let me describe another. So he gives a series of simple, short type of thing and forces people to look at the definition and relate the definition. Thereby, they operationalize the definition. The definition becomes more meaningful to them. And they also realize this definition has some relevance to what they will be doing as a job. So this is my version of a Textra game. The text material is the definition written on a handout on a piece of card. And the activity is, you got the definition, I'm going to give you a case, relate the definition to the case. And if it gets boring, I'm going to ask two of you to relate the definition to the case, and whoever did a better job gets 10 points, and you get a free copy of the Pro Tool software program or something like that. So keep asking yourself what device, what content related materials I have available and how can I use it. Okay. Should I share the handout with the 20 learning activities now? No, it's too late. Let's skip it. No, just kidding. Okay, here is the answer to all your question. Esther is going to put the link to a handout called 20 learning activities. Esther, can you click on the link and see, can we see what is in that PDF file? In other words, can you show the PDF file on the screen? Ah, good. Can you scroll it quickly because these are accelerative learning folks. Folks, here are 20 different types of activities. Keep going. For the activities, this for online information, keep going. Application activity, this for job aids. Each one has a sample activity. Assessment based, this for test instruments. So this describes a true false. Brain pick if you got a lot of people who know about a topic, that is a brain pick game. We'll be talking about these types of things in my next session, where live sources are available. And next, keep going, Esther. The case method, this is how you work with the cases. If your source is cases, coaching activity, if you got a coach like Nick, who is a coach when it comes to organizing a band, how can you make it into an activity which makes use of his talent? Next one. Debriefing games. After you have played a game, everybody has some understanding. So you conduct a debriefing game. And next activity, double exposure, video recording. One of the cute activities. This one is you play a soap opera from Malay language, which is an African language, a video soap opera from the Malay language, 10-minute clip, and at the end, ask people, you did not understand the language, but you were watching the body language and people's expressions and things of that nature. Based on that, what do you think happened in this segment? And you can see how different people interpret the same thing in the absence of spoken language, many different ways. And the learning point being, it is dangerous to jump to conclusion about what is happening in a situation when you don't really understand the language. Okay, continue, please, Esther. Field studies in expedition. This one describes we were training fast food staff, employees in a fast food restaurant, and instead of lecturing to them, we send them out and say, go to the 7 different fast food restaurants in your town and come back, and we will ask you a series of questions. Which one did you find was most useful? Which one was interesting? And things of that nature. Next thing is graphics game. So at the end of a lecture, you show half a dozen picture postcards and tell people of these half a dozen picture postcard, which one is most closely related to the topic of using Pro Tool as a device. And there cannot be clear-cut things. Interactive lecture, we talked about it. Interactive storytelling, instead of my telling you a story, we randomly ask Laura to tell a story of what happened in that session. And then we ask people, what did we learn from this story? Did anything similar to that ever happen to you? That is interactive storytelling, where you don't make people listen to your story, you make people come up with their own story and listen to them. Next one, item processing. If you got a lot of items, like here are complaints from our customers, and can you organize them into different clusters? You learn more about customer complaints, mutual learning activities. So if we have people with different levels, anybody who has been a player in a band, anybody who has organized a band, let us get you all together and let us learn from each other. Next item. Object lesson. we taught people, for example, recently we got everybody in an organization an iPad. We wanted to teach them how to use the iPad to go online and get information on software for leading a band or whatever exotic topic, random topic, and we then say, okay, you can learn how to use the iPad without my having to lecture. It has a tutorial, it has a help screen, it has people who are familiar with the iPad before, things of that nature. So learn by yourself, use your own intelligence, your own approaches. And if you cannot figure something out, come and ask me. But if you ask me how to do this or that, for which the answer is available somewhere in the iPad or among the other people, we will fine you $10. So try to learn by yourself. Okay, next slide. Replay activity, which is playing a video and playing it again and seeing when you played it the second time, what additional things did you learn that you missed on the first time and where did that happen? And the next slide, next page, sampling activity. Here are 20 different covers of different books. Which cover do you like the best? What are the aspects of good cover design? Structured sharing, which is learning from the people. Okay, how many of you hate teamwork? How many of you like teamwork? So can each one of you who like teamwork find somebody who hates teamwork and share what makes you hate it or like it? And if there is not enough difference, let us count by threes. All number ones, you hate teamwork. Let us pretend. All number twos, you love teamwork. All number three, you're neutral about teamwork. Now get in groups, play your role, and share why people hate or like teamwork. We'll learn more about it. And the next one is table activity. Here are 5 important corporate values. Let us make it into a table. And this value, how does the manager exhibit this value? How does the employee exhibit this value? How does the customer exhibit this value? And last but not least, text or game. Here is information. So the idea of the booklet is you got 10 different content sources. For each content sources, you have a suitable set of activities you can use. So you can become an instant expert. And your homework assignment is for you to go through these 20 pages and see how many of these different types of activities you can use, which one is the least usable activity. Once you have decided which one is the least usable, now go back to that type of activity and force yourself, how can I use that type of activity to teach Pro Tool? What content do I need to have? Can I create the content or can I get the content? Things of that nature, which brings me to 5 minutes and 25 seconds for any questions, comments, sarcastic remarks. Okay, here is a way
Thiagi,
of,
there's
yes,
a question in the chat. Can you use some of these activities for multiple sources?
yes. Excellent question. By the way, I always assume any content, any topic I want to teach has multiple sources. And I look for multiple sources. Don't trust only on a book or on a video, but see if I can come up with at least 3 different sources for anything I want to teach and make them available for my participants and create multiple content sources. So that is an excellent question. And yes, you can use it as multiple source. And I frequently use text materials. So as a punishment, I tell myself for the next time I'm going to be teaching, I'm going to be using a video and force myself to do that. So use this activity for multiple sources, but equally importantly, have multiple sources for anything you want to teach, for any activity you want to use. Good. Thank you, Ken, for that question. Okay. Now, here is one way of torturing people. The session comes to an end after 5 of you have completed this sentence. Many of you are probably familiar. Can you complete this sentence? The most useful thing I learned in this session is, however you complete it, and you cannot repeat something somebody already said, and you cannot leave the Zoom room. We got you trapped unless at least 5 of you have completed this sentence, that the most useful thing I learned today is. By the way, the earlier you get, the happier you will be, because nobody will be able to steal your idea. You don't have to be polite, raise your hand, just yell out. Laura, thank you. Design activities, not content, says Nick. To add activities, says CJ, JC. I see 3 responses. You can talk 2 if you want. I need 2 before we open the door. Good, good.
Jesse had to go, but he said the most useful thing I learned in this session was the interactive lecture.
Okay, good. That makes it 5. Thank you all, everybody.